Most people think habits are about discipline. They think habits are about motivation. They think habits are about forcing yourself to do something you don't feel like doing. But that's not why habits fail. Habits fail because we start with what we want to do instead of why we want to do it. We wake up one morning and say, I should wake up earlier. I should exercise. I should read more. I should be more focused. And for a few days, maybe even a few weeks, we try, then life gets busy. Energy drops, motivation disappears, and the habit dies quietly without drama. Not because the habit was wrong, but because it had no meaning. You see, the human brain doesn't commit to actions, it commits to reasons. When you don't know why you're doing something, your brain treats it as optional, and optional things are the first to go when life gets hard. Starting with why is not inspirational fluff, it's biological, it's psychological, it's how we're wired. Think about it. If you wake up early because someone told you, successful people wake up early, that habit won at last. But if you wake up early because that quiet hour is the only time you feel in control of your life, suddenly it's not a habit, it's a refuge. If you exercise because you want to look better, that motivation fades the moment progress slows. But if you exercise because you want to be strong enough to show up fully for the people who depend on you, missing a workout feels like breaking a promise. Purpose changes everything. The most powerful habits are not driven by pressure. They are driven by identity. When your habit is connected to who you believe you are or who you're trying to become, it stops feeling like effort. It starts feeling like alignment. This is why two people can try the same habit and have completely different outcomes. One burns out, the other becomes consistent. The difference is not willpower, it's meaning. One is asking, what should I do? The other is asking, why does this matter? And here's the uncomfortable truth. If you can't clearly explain why a habit matters to your life, you're not ready to commit to it yet. Clarity comes before consistency. Before you change what you do every day, you must decide what you stand for. Ask yourself this: why does becoming healthier matter to me? Really? Why does growing matter? Why does discipline matter? Why does showing up matter? Not the surface answers. Not the answers that sound good to others, the honest ones. Because when the why is weak, excuses sound reasonable. But when the why is strong, excuses sound hollow. Purpose doesn't eliminate struggle, it gives struggle direction. There will still be mornings you don't feel like it. There will still be days when quitting seems logical. But purpose gives you a reason to act, even when logic tells you to stop. And here's something most people don't realize. Starting with why doesn't mean having a grand life mission. It can be simple, it can be quiet, it can be deeply personal. Your why might be peace, it might be freedom, it might be proving something to yourself. It might be becoming someone your younger self needed. It doesn't have to impress anyone, it just has to be true. When a habit is connected to truth, it becomes resilient. This is why discipline built on fear collapses. This is why habits built on comparison fade. And this is why habits built on meaning endure. You don't need more habits. You need fewer habits with deeper reasons. Instead of trying to change your entire life, start with one small question. Why does this habit deserve a place in my life? And if the answer is unclear, don't force the habit. Refine the why. Because once the why is clear, the how becomes easier. When you know why you're doing something, you stop negotiating with yourself, you stop waiting for motivation, you stop needing reminders. The habit becomes a reflection of your values, and values are things we protect, even when it's inconvenient. This is how small habits change your life forever, not because they're impressive, but because they're intentional. Not because they make you productive, but because they make you aligned. A life of meaning is not built in big decisions made once. It's built in small decisions made daily, guided by a clear sense of why. And when you start there, when every habit is rooted in purpose, you don't just change what you do, you change who you become. We've been taught to admire intensity. We celebrate the all-nighter, the sudden transformation, the overnight success. We praise the person who changes everything at once. But intensity is loud, consistency is quiet, and quiet things are easy to ignore until they change everything. Most people don't lose momentum because they stop caring. They lose momentum because they expect progress to feel exciting forever. They believe if it doesn't feel hard, it doesn't count. And if it doesn't feel big, it doesn't matter. But the human brain doesn't change through bursts. It changes through repetition. The actions you repeat become the thoughts you believe. The thoughts you believe become the person you trust. And that person decides what kind of life you live. That's why small, consistent actions are so powerful. They don't shock your system. They don't demand heroics. They slip into your life quietly and begin reshaping your identity. Anyone can be intense for a week. Anyone can be motivated for a month. But consistency requires something deeper than excitement. It requires patience. It requires humility. It requires the willingness to look unimpressive while you're becoming stronger. Consistency doesn't ask, how fast can I change? It asks, how long can I stay true to this? And here's the shift most people miss. Consistency is not about doing more. It's about doing less, reliably. Reading 10 pages every day beats reading 100 once a month. 5 minutes of reflection daily beats an hour once a year. One small choice repeated beats one massive effort abandoned. The goal of consistency is not visible progress. It's internal proof. Every time you show up, even when it feels insignificant, you send yourself a message. I am the kind of person who follows through. That message matters more than results, because results come and go. Identity stays. This is why consistency changes behavior while intensity only changes outcomes. Intensity gets you short-term wins. Consistency changes who you are when no one is watching, and when life gets difficult, and it will. You don't rise to your best intentions, you fall to your most consistent behaviors. Consistency removes decision fatigue. You no longer ask, should I do this today? You already decided yesterday. That's freedom. It's not glamorous. It doesn't make for dramatic stories, but it builds trust with yourself. And self-trust is the foundation of confidence. If you want to change your life, stop asking how much you can do. Start asking how little you can do and still show up every day. Because the smallest consistent action, done long enough, doesn't just create progress. It creates belief, and belief is what makes change permanent. Most people believe their behavior is a personal failure. They say, I lack discipline, I don't have willpower, I just need to try harder. But what if that's not true? What if the problem isn't you at all, but what surrounds you? Human behavior is predictable. Put the same person in two different environments, and you'll get two different outcomes. Not because their character changed, but because the context did. We like to believe we are in control of every choice we make, that if we really wanted to change, we would, but the truth is most of our decisions are reactions, not intentions. We eat what's in front of us. We focus on what's closest. We become what we're repeatedly exposed to. And yet, instead of changing the environment, we punish ourselves. Environment is not about perfection, it's about direction. If your phone is the first thing you see in the morning, distraction wins. If junk food is within reach, discipline loses. If negative voices surround you, self-doubt grows quietly. This isn't weakness, it's design. The most effective leaders don't demand better behavior. They create better conditions. When you make the right choice, the easiest choice, consistency stops feeling like a battle. You no longer rely on motivation. You rely on structure. Small changes in your environment create disproportionate results. Put a book on your pillow, and suddenly reading becomes natural. Leave your shoes by the door, and movement becomes a reminder. Remove one distraction, and defocus returns without effort. Notice what's missing here. Force. Force exhausts. Environment guides. And here's the deeper truth. The environments we choose are a reflection of what we believe we deserve. If you believe you deserve chaos, you tolerate it. If you believe you deserve focus, you protect it. So this is not just about cleaning your desk or organizing your schedule. It's about deciding what kind of life you're willing to support. Because every environment sends a message. It tells you what's normal. It tells you what's acceptable. It tells you who you are allowed to become. And we become the story our environment repeats. Change the room, and the behavior follows. Change the people, and the standards rise. Change what you see daily, and your future shifts quietly. You don't need more discipline. You need fewer obstacles. Design a life where the habits you want are the ones that happen by default. When your environment works for you instead of against you, change stops being exhausting. It becomes inevitable. We hear our own voice more than any other voice we will ever hear in our lives. It speaks when no one is listening. It narrates every success, every mistake, every quiet moment in between. And yet, it's the one voice we rarely question. Most people would never speak to a friend the way they speak to themselves. They would never use the same harsh tone, the same unforgiving language, the same constant doubt. But because it's internal, because it's familiar, we accept it as truth. Words shape perception, and perception shapes reality. The story you repeat to yourself becomes the story you live into. When you say, "I'm bad at this," your brain stops looking for improvement. When you say, "I always fail," your mind starts collecting evidence to prove it right. Not because it's accurate, but because consistency feels safe. The brain's job is not to make you successful. Its job is to keep you aligned with what you believe. This is why self-talk matters more than motivation. Motivation fades, language remains. The words you choose create emotional weight. They influence how much effort you're willing to give, how much risk you're willing to take, how long you're willing to stay in the game. Changing the way you speak to yourself is not about blind positivity. It's about honest encouragement. There's a difference between denial and belief. Denial ignores reality. Belief engages with reality and chooses a constructive response. Instead of saying, "I can't do this," you say, "I haven't figured this out yet." Instead of saying, "I'm not good enough," you say, "I'm still learning." These are not small shifts. They keep the door open. Language doesn't just describe experience, it directs it. When your inner voice is supportive, setbacks feel temporary. When it's critical, setbacks feel final. And here's what most people don't realize. You didn't choose your inner voice. You inherited it from parents, teachers, culture, and past experiences. But you are responsible for editing it. The goal is not to silence that voice. It's to lead it. You don't eliminate doubt by arguing with it. You replace it by giving it a better narrative to follow. A leader doesn't scream at their team for struggling. They give clarity. They give reassurance. They remind them why the work matters. You deserve the same leadership from yourself. The way you speak internally sets the emotional tone for your life. It determines whether challenges feel like threats or invitations. When you learn to speak to yourself with respect, effort feels safer. Failure feels informative. Growth feels possible. Over time, this quiet habit changes what you attempt, how long you persist, and who you allow yourself to become, because the voice you listen to most should be the one that helps you move forward, not the one that keeps you stuck. We often think habits are about personal success, about improvement, about becoming better, faster, stronger, but habits that last are rarely built on self-interest alone. When everything you do is only for you, motivation becomes fragile. The moment progress slows, the moment the reward feels distant, the habit begins to feel optional. Human beings are not wired only for achievement. We're wired for contribution. We are strongest when we feel useful. We are most resilient when our actions matter to someone else. This is why purpose bigger than self changes the game. When a habit is connected to service, quitting feels different. Skipping feels heavier. Because you're no longer letting yourself down. You're letting something bigger down. A parent doesn't show up every day because it's easy. They show up because someone depends on them. A leader doesn't prepare because they feel like it. They prepare because others are counting on their clarity. Service creates accountability without pressure, and it doesn't have to be dramatic. Serving something bigger doesn't mean saving the world. It means understanding who benefits when you show up as your best self. Maybe your discipline gives your family stability. Maybe your growth gives others permission to grow. Maybe your consistency creates trust in places that need it most. When you connect habits to impact, effort becomes meaningful. This is why people will push harder for a cause than for a reward, why they'll endure discomfort when there's a sense of responsibility attached. Responsibility is not a burden, it's a source of strength. When your actions are in service of something larger, habits stop being transactional. They become relational. You're no longer asking, "What do I get?" You're asking, "Who am I helping?" And that question changes behavior. It shifts focus away from ego and toward legacy, away from quick wins and toward long-term trust. The most fulfilled people are not the most self-optimized. They are the most useful. And usefulness gives meaning to repetition. Doing the same small thing every day can feel pointless. Unless you know it matters, service answers that question. It reminds you that your effort echoes beyond your own life, that your discipline is not isolated, that your growth creates ripples you may never see. And here's the paradox. When you stop making life only about yourself, life starts giving more back, not because you're entitled to it, but because purpose fuels perseverance. Habits built in service don't rely on mood. They rely on commitment. And commitment is what carries you through days when inspiration is nowhere to be found. If you want habits that last, don't just ask how they improve you. Ask how they help others. Because when your daily actions contribute to something bigger than you, quitting no longer feels like an option. It feels like walking away from meaning. And meaning is what turns small habits into a life that lasts.